At this time, I'd like to introduce the Highland High School Choir, led by Mr. Andy Gibb Clark, and they will sing the national anthem. Gentlemen, would you please remove your hats and please rise.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose cross stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning. I would like to extend a warm welcome to students, parents, faculty, and staff, alumni, community members, and our distinguished veterans. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you today for the 2020 Virtual Veterans Day ceremony at Highland High School. We wish we could be here in person, but we've put together a great program today to honor our veterans. Each year we come together on this special day to honor those that have bravely served our country during wartime and in peace. Over the next several days, parades, memorials, and ceremonies will be held throughout our great nation, honoring our veterans. And today, we're here to thank them for their service. What's amazing about Veterans Day is that it allows Americans to come together as one to support those who have served. We unite as a country to show appreciation for those who have given so much for our freedom. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you live in the city or the country, or what your religion is, or your skin color, or your gender, or how much money you make. What truly matters is that we show unity and respect to our American veterans who have bravely served our country. When I asked my father, who served in the Persian Gulf War in the 90s, what unity meant to him as a veteran, he said it's soldiers coming together to accomplish their mission with teamwork and esprit de corps, which means a feeling of pride, fellowship, and common loyalty shared by a particular group. The most important part is everyone working together towards a goal and respecting each other and those who are in charge. Dad said that veterans were very important to him, and when he led his soldiers, he noted that each were motivated in different ways. It was important to treat them with respect and to allow input whenever possible. He said during the time he led his unit that there was no color when he worked as a team in the military. He never looked at people as Asian or black or Hispanic or male or female. He looked at them as soldiers. He tried to treat them the way they wanted to be treated and respect them and let them rise to the highest levels of success. He also made sure that he knew how proud he was of them for their part. And we are so proud of all our American veterans today. When we live in a world and a country where we're constantly trying to be divided, I encourage all of you to put aside your differences, stand together as a great nation, and be united as one. As future leaders of the next generation, please do everything you can to preserve our democracy, our freedoms, our way of life. And don't ever forget, freedom isn't free. And obviously, our veterans have given us this great freedom. And finally, we thank our veterans who have served our country, given us those freedoms. Thank you for your service, and God bless. And now the Highland High School Band will play the March of the Armed Forces. At this time, I'd like to introduce high school history teacher and head baseball coach, Mr. Joel Hawkins.
Thanks, Dr. Becker. We'll begin by listening to our students answer the question, what is a veteran? What's a veteran?
A veteran is a person who has served our country.
Okay.
I think a veteran is someone who has risked their life for our country and someone who has gone out of their way to make themselves vulnerable in situations that most of us would be uncomfortable in to protect our freedom.
I think a veteran is somebody who sacrifices everything, their time with their family, their own personal comfort, their own personal desires, and they all put that aside in order to put their country first.
This past week, election week, has contained a lot of chaos. There's two parties divided, firing epithets at one another, lawsuits being filed, threats of physical action. We see all this stuff going on around us in our country. Thankfully, the one topic that seems to unite us is veterans and the opportunity to be grateful to veterans. We get that chance today. We're going to hear 5 stories from some of the various Highland veterans. We're going to start our time by listening to Logan Caribbean, a 2015 graduate from Highland High School, talk about his time in the United States Marine Corps. And your job there was?
There was about 120 of us there, and our sole job was just to fix site security for the United States Embassy and all the diplomats and U.S. personnel that was there. Earlier when I was there, we were fixed site security at the embassy. Now when we were there, we had a couple rocket attacks, so launching mortars into the embassy, stuff like that, but no direct combat or anything like that. Most of that is scaled down. And where the embassy is located at inside of Baghdad is actually called the Green Zone.
How long were you on this duty?
I was there for 7 months. It sounds funny because during the workday it was extremely dangerous. It was fixed site security, all that good jazz. But at the same time at night, we basically lived a 5-star life where we lived in Department of State housing on the embassy. We were living in suites. We had like chefs and everything. So it was pretty nice. I would say one of the biggest one that sticks out and one that we were it's weird to say proud of, but it was something we were really proud of because it took a lot of effort and a lot of planning and prep work, and everything just ended up working out just right. We had some intel of, well, when I was in Afghanistan, we worked directly with a group called HIMARS, which are in the Marines, and basically they're these big trucks that have, basically look like semi-trucks, and the back of it they raise up and they have missiles that they shoot out of them. And they're accurate up to like 10 meters, so they're pretty accurate. But anyways, we were their security. So anytime they went anywhere out on a mission, anything like that, we went with them. And we're security for them. We had intel that there was a Taliban meeting going on in a place called Lashkar Gah, which is the capital of Helmand province, just a little village north of Lashkar Gah. And we had intel that this was happening ways before. And we basically set up a fire mission with these HIMARS, and we went out on about a 12-hour mission. And then I was a vehicle commander, so I was in charge of the entire vehicle itself and all the personnel and gear in it. So basically I sat in the passenger seat and would communicate with my squad leader, who was another vehicle commander, and we would just operate and set up perimeters and basically lead and protect convoys. Well, when it comes to working with like other Marines, yeah, I mean, I trust every Marine with everything that I have.
Sure.
But when it comes to other entities such as the Afghan National Army or the Afghan National Police, you can never be too careful of those guys.
How proud are you that you served in the United States Marines?
More proud of anything I could ever be proud of in my life. It's the most proud thing that I've ever done.
Okay.
The thing that made me most proud. To me, being an American is number one. Actually, proud of most definitely being United States Marine is number one, and number two, that is being American.
Our school nurse, Natalie Proft, has unfortunately been very busy lately, but she was also busy as a member of the Air National Guard. She served from 2009 to 2015 as a knowledge operations management person, and her story really illustrates the importance of our behind-the-scenes personnel in the United States military. Listen.
Well, it's a 6-year commitment. You do 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year. Usually you're 2 weeks a year in the summer. So knowledge, operations, and management, records. We keep track of records like official letters, memorandums, anything that everything's considered a record really. So it's just keeping those things in a file cabinet. There's a certain period of time that you hold them on file in your person, and then based on guidelines, policies, and procedures, you move them to another location where they're stored for 20 years. Some records are stored forever, like medical records. Those are kept long term.
Do veterans feel, you're a veteran, do you feel appreciation or appreciated?
I do. People that know that I'm in the service or have found out say thanks to me. I've never deployed, so it's kind of weird for me, but I do understand that we all play a part in helping our nation be ready and helping the wars overseas. But in general, I do feel like veterans are pretty appreciated, especially compared to people who served like in Vietnam War. I think that those are vets that are very much unappreciated. And I have so much respect for those that came before me because they set the path for my success in the military and in my professional life as well. So.
Natalie's story reminds us that each person in each position is important in that supply chain. The folks out in front cannot do the job without the folks that are supplying in the behind of the scenes, and that's what she shows us there. I also want to point out Logan and Natalie both served during the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, where now almost 7,000 Americans have been killed and some 50,000 were wounded. So that's quite an era. We need to turn now to the Vietnam era. We're going to talk about Jerry Reckman next, and what an amazing story he has. His son Derek is an assistant coach here in baseball at Highland High School, and here's his account. We're honored to have Jerry Reckman along with us.
Being drafted into the United States Army, and I had to report in February of 1969 to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training. And I wanted to serve my country. I mean, I wasn't trying to get around it. I just happened to work at Boeing and be deferred just out of the sheer fact that that's where I got a job after I got out of high school. The general said one thing right towards the end that kind of caught everybody's attention, and that was, he said, I want you to look around you. So everybody kind of looked around at all the different, there was hundreds of us sitting there in these stands. He said, I'm going to tell you right now that 7 out of every 10 of you are either going to be wounded or killed. Only 3 out of 10 of you, 30%, are going to come back the way you're sitting here right now, which was a very shocking thing. I started out, the first thing you do when you get there is you walk point. You're the lead guy, which is not a good thing. And I still to this day don't understand, because you're the least knowledgeable because you just got there, but you're the one that has to lead everybody. Mr. Reckman, you get the machine gun, which isn't bad because you carry the most of the firepower, okay? Because you can throw a whole lot more bullets out, if you would, than anybody else with the machine gun. Every day we had to go out. Some days we walked, some days we just did a 1 or 2 day walk out in the field, and came back always looking for the enemy. That was our job. We were just supposed to search and destroy. I got the Air Medal for that, the Eagle Flight Medal for that. You had to do at least 25 missions or more, so had to fly in under fire to help out and support the other troops, and you had to do at least 25. So I did at least 25 of them. I couldn't tell you. I didn't sit and count.
Tell us about the day that you got wounded, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was early December of '69, and it was one of those days, like I mentioned, the easy days, when we were going to get to stay in the fire support base and read our letters that we got from home, and and things like that. I'd get the Highland News Leader sent to me over there, and I could sit and read that at the base camp. I didn't have to go out and look, and I was safe. Well, the first thing you have to do though on that day is you have to do what they call a reconnaissance of your base camp. So my squad, we all took off going down the path that we always take all the way around there, checking to make sure that there's concertina wire, which is basically razor wire, all around there. We were making sure that none of that was cut and that they weren't doing anything at night. And we got to about a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile away from the base camp, and all of a sudden the ground shook, and I just sounded like a swarm of bees flew by me, just a really loud sound. And I turned around, and all of the soldiers behind me were laying on the ground. And what had happened is the RTO, our radio operator, had stepped on a booby trap. It was a 105 artillery round that had been rigged up with a pressure sensing device that when he stepped on it, it would ignite, it would go off. When he did, there was just nothing left of him. It just shredded him basically. And most of the other, well, there were 10 of us in the squad that went out. 3, the medic and the point man didn't get hurt, and 1 other guy. I was wounded, but all the other 6 died eventually. I said, "Doc, something's wrong." I said, "I'm trying to help this guy, but I said, I am getting so dizzy, I don't know what's wrong." He said, "Are you hit?" Now this, mind you, this was probably 5 to 10 seconds after this actually happened. And I said, "I don't," and I raised my arms like this, and I started to say, "I don't think so." And then all of a sudden, the artery in my arm here had been blown out by a piece of shrapnel. And then the pain hit. I could feel it. And blood would shoot out of my arm about 1.5 to 2 feet as my heart would pulsate. That blood would just shoot straight out. So I told him, "Yes, I'm hit in my arm." And he said, "Well, I can't get to you. Can you tie your arm off somehow?" So I carried the machine gun, and you carry the machine gun on your shoulder because it weighed around 45, 50 pounds. And you carried it on your shoulder so that it didn't cut into your shoulder. So that's why I had the towel on my shoulder. So I took that towel and I put it above where the wound was, and I put one end in my mouth and the other end in my other hand, and then I yanked it just as hard as I could. And I yanked it so hard it hurt worse when I squeezed that than the wound did at the time. When we came back, we were not treated very well. And people did not like Vietnam War. There was protests, demonstrations, and a lot of things that here in the United States, all over TV and newspapers that said, these people are murderers. We went through airports and they'd have signs up and they'd be yelling things at us and telling us to just go back to Vietnam. You like it so much killing people, go back there, And once in a while there would be someone that would thank us and would, give us a pat on the back. But at that particular time, there was such an anti-war thing going on that most people in the airports were there just to provoke us. That's when it really bothered me. All these people that lost their lives, family, they had family back home and all that, and to come back and I hear them saying all of that and knowing that all these guys lost their lives trying to help keep the country free. And signs they were holding signs that said, "This is a free country. If you want to fight and kill people, go back to Vietnam." Well, the reason the country is free is because the veterans were fighting to keep it free. They didn't understand it. We were trying to fight off communism to keep it from expanding into other areas.
Yeah. Are you proud you're a veteran?
Oh, yes. It's mentally very, very difficult to go through this, and you hear things, you see things. I mean, when you're picking up your good friend and you're putting him in a bag, you know that he's got a young son, and a wife at home because you were just talking to him, you've seen him reading a letter from it, and now you're putting him in there, and then you have to push him. There's no grieving process. You just pray and move on, and there's no time to rest. So the things you go through are so difficult that you can't replicate them here necessarily back here now. So that's why things, sometimes people will think, well, why didn't that make you mad? Or why don't it just, it takes a lot to get me mad, because what I've been through, there's nothing that can do equal it. So even though I fought in the war, there's nothing good about a war, because people die. And it's because two entities don't agree, or that there's a, in our case, we were fighting off the communism, trying to keep it from they were trying to take over Asia at the time, and the United States knew if they took over that part of Asia, it was just on the other side of the Pacific, and it wouldn't be long and they'd be coming after us again. So we were over there trying to combat and hold them off. So that, I just wish there was a peaceful way to do it.
Yeah, isn't that well stated? Plus, 36 years married, Jerry Reckman. That's a great story. Jerry is one of over 2.5 million veterans who served in Vietnam, and as many of you know, 58,209 of them were killed, and over 153,000 of them were wounded. And of course, you know all about the fact that they were totally underappreciated upon their return to the USA. And it was a very difficult time, the Vietnam War era, and that we want to appreciate today. We also want to appreciate the Korean War era. The numbers from Korea are 36,516 dead, over 8,000 missing in action in the Korean War, which was extremely expensive from a human standpoint, terribly bloody, and of course, many of its issues are still unresolved. Now we're going to talk about the World War II generation, the greatest generation as it's been called. One of our finest citizens here in Highland is Roland Harris, and his wife Lorna. They've been married some 73 years, and they live at the Highland home, and Roland is going to talk about his experience from World War II. He is a 1943 graduate of Highland High School.
Well, I didn't decide. I was drafted.
You were drafted.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome to the Army.
Yes. Just before we were sent overseas, I was told that I'm leading the group, taking all these trainees that we'd just been working with for 16 weeks out to Fort Ord, California. And so I had 216 men. And then on December the 31st of 1944, we loaded in a boat and sat off of Hawaii for 5 days, waiting for the convoy to get together. There was about 35 to 40 ships in the convoy.
Wow.
And went to the island of New Caledonia, which is down across from New Zealand and Australia. I went into the Philippines, and we 31 days again, we're on board ship, and our guns are on deck, and we're working with brand new guns, 105 howitzers. Well, it was hot. We thought it was hot, but it wasn't as hot as it's going to get. But we did cross the equator, and when we crossed, they said it was only 123 degrees.
Okay.
And then we started firing into these caves with our 105 howitzer. Usually in about the third or fourth shot, there would either be the first, second, third, or fourth gun firing. We would be able to put a shell in the cave. And we took care of whatever was in the cave. We had no idea how many men. Our captain said there was roughly 3,000, they figured, originally there. No one else had ever said anything about how many. And between number 2 and number 3, this shell landed and injured 21 men. Most of the men heard it coming, just like I did, and was able to duck down. I ducked down behind the wheel, big wheel of the gun that I was with. But the man in number 2 position, who I had just given the information to load his gun, he knew that if he dropped that shell, didn't load it, and dropped that shell, that he would probably kill a lot of men. Oh yeah, we were friends. We were together from. He was in my class, and then he got to be a corporal. So the gunner was a corporal. He really knew how to use that gun. But we were sent from Luzon, from Leyte to Luzon. Luzon is where Manila is. Mm-hmm. And we were sent to the #1 station hospital in Manila to interview all the men that were coming back from Japan and all the terrible stories that they told us about the atrocities that the Japanese did with them. I saw many things that you just don't want to even remember. Mm-hmm. So he was the one who gave us all these stories about what happened, because it's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And I did this for 3 weeks. I was interviewing these men. I could not sleep. I just couldn't sleep. I was dreaming all the time, terrible dreams. And 3rd week, the captain comes and says, "You're now in charge. You're now going to be the acting first sergeant." Interviewed a man, 82 pounds. My buddy interviewed a man, 71 pounds. Nothing but skin and bones.
Still alive.
Still alive. He was on a stretcher. He was in the hospital. So we had 4 boys. Proud boys, we can read. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
They've all done great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, what a family the Harrises are, and they've been a pillar here in Highland for such a long time. And another timeless Highland treasure set is 99-year-old Will Rosum and his wife Mary. And here is his story. Everybody needs to know that this is Will Rosum, and Will is an amazing gentleman. Mary, his wife, for 120 years. How long has it been now?
70 it was in April.
70
in April.
years they've been married. 99 years old, Will Rosum was born in 1921.
Well, I was at my grandma's on Sunday when the war was declared. She had a little radio on a table in the living room, and we heard it just like that, you know.
So you remember that moment loud and clear.
I can't understand why God would want to go in the army. Of all the things that they got to go through, the mud and the rain and the snow and that big pack on their back. Man, there's a gal here in Highland brought that pack in a church. And she brought it up there, and that thing must have weighed 300 pounds. And she showed us that big pack, and I'm going to walk 30 miles down my back. I said, I'll take this boat anytime, ship. Communication radio, I was a yeoman, typed up dispatches, and I typed up the material for the officers. And, well, up there you're like this, you're going like this here, man. It's the sky control is what they call it. And there's about, on each side, there's 3 lookouts on each side.
Now, why were you called the Lucky A? The USS Alabama was...
Well, we never got bombed, or we never got hit. Nothing hit us, except typhoon.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell you more about the ship.
Yeah. How often did these get used, these guns?
When we were off Saipan, they got used a lot.
Yeah.
In Saipan and Tinian and Guam, they would use a lot.
Were you firing on those islands, or were you firing on something that was out at sea?
Firing those islands. Firing that the Japanese owned those islands. The most enjoyable time I had aboard that ship was climbing up that anchor chain and dive off.
Yeah.
Guy said, where you going? You're crazy. I said, why? He said, there's sharks down there. I said, yeah, you see that one right there. I said, I'm going to go down and pet him. He looked at me like that, you know. He says, this guy's a little crazy.
I don't believe that.
No, it's too hard to tell you. It's too hard to tell you. Because I like the Navy, and I enjoyed my ship.
Some of the Japanese fellows that were shot down, or you talked about how young.
Oh, yeah, I don't. Yeah.
He gets pretty
I
emotional.
don't want to talk about that. But
Okay.
this kid, I was on the fantail, and as a lookout, and this plane was coming in, and I'm looking at this plane, and this kid, he was 9 years old. If he was 10, he was holding up his fist like that, coming at me, and he crashed into our plane, into our ship, and killed himself. And every time I see a kid like that, especially in Japanese, that kind of shakes me up.
Sure.
We had an air attack every night for a week or more.
Mm-hmm.
Kamikazes come in there, crashed into our ship.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't stop them. Discipline, honor for your country.
Yep.
Working together with men and officers, which are men, and fighting for my country. A lot of people don't know what they got here.
Wow.
They have no idea what they got.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was powerfully put by Will Rosen. You know, Will invited me to join him on the bow of the USS Alabama for one more dive off of it. What do you folks think? You need to know, 75 years ago this summer, World War II came to an end. The Americans lost 420,000, almost 420,000 folks were killed in World War II. And the World War II veterans are going away. Only 296 now die on a daily basis. That number is way down from years past. They are a treasure we still want to tap.
Thank you, first of all. And I think every veteran needs to share their story so that we know what they did for our country.
I would like to say thank you for all the work you have put into our country and for protecting us, and that we appreciate everything you do.
I can't even begin to say how grateful I am for somebody who's 24/7 always fighting for me, fighting for everyone in this town, everybody in this country to be free, for every freedom that what our founding fathers put into our Constitution. And I just want to say we're really grateful, and we should say it more often, and we don't. But thank you.
Those wonderful expressions of gratitude are for these remarkable folks with their remarkable stories. You know, I wish I could take you with me into the interview where you could personally touch the history, where you could go back and feel the sacrifice and understand the service that these folks have provided. I wish I could take you in there, you know, to personally feel that. And it's at this moment, at each year, that we normally, you guys hammer out a thunderous ovation, a big standing ovation that visibly moves these veterans and really moves all of us, but especially the veterans. And then you get to personally shake their hand after the assembly ends. How do we replace that? This has been a weird year that way, and the thank yous of these students is a start toward that. You know, maybe there's a way to come together, unite over the top of personal preferences, ethnicity, gender, whatever the background issues might be. Come together to find a creative, inventive, unique way, in some memorable way, to say thank you to these incredible, remarkable folks with these remarkable stories. Maybe we'll start it like this. To the veterans that watched this little program, from the bottom of our heart, we say thank you for your service and God bless.